Good afternoon, everybody. I am Lisa Twilley, the director of the Women's Business Center at Maryland Capital Enterprises. And thank you guys for joining us today. Let me just give you a little information about MCE. We are a nonprofit based in Salisbury. We also have an office in Baltimore. We assist entrepreneurs that are getting started in business or if they're already in business and trying to expand. We do free business consulting, marketing consulting, training workshops such as this. We also offer small business loans. So if we can be of any assistance to you, please reach out. I will put my contact information in the chat. You can either call or email me, either one. But we serve all the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Hartford County, and Cecil County. We just added a couple new ones. So if you are in one of those counties and we can help you, with a business plan, help you with cash flow projections, getting ready for the loan, things like that. And all of our services are free. So definitely take advantage of free services. But I'll put our information in the chat. I'm excited to have Hope Brown here with us today. She is she works tax-minded bookkeeper, and she's the owner of that. And she's joining us, and she's going to inform us about getting ready for tax season. So I'm excited. Thank you so much, Hope.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks for having me too. All right, guys. So today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite time of the year. Like, yay, tax season. Like, I know, hold back your enthusiasm just a little bit. I get it. I get it. But let me share my presentation, and then we're going to jump in and start to get started with everything. All right. All right. So cool beans. So I'm Hope Brown. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, entitled Tax Season Prep for Small Business Owners. All right. So I'm going to go through at a super high level today information that you need to be gathering as a business owner, what to avoid, and just how to feel a little bit more ready. Because this time of year, I know from working with tax clients, bookkeeping clients, it can be kind of heavy for individuals trying to get through and get ready to actually file their taxes. But hopefully, we'll be able to share something today that makes it a little bit more okay for you guys. All right. So let's start off with setting the expectations, okay? What this session is and isn't, okay? So what we're going to be doing in this session, or my hope that we're going to be doing is hopefully reducing the confusion and just that overwhelming feeling about the tax season. If you are a new business owner, if you haven't felt it up to this point on some level, some year you're going to feel like the tax season and the heaviness that it can bring as a business owner, especially if you're feeling like you're confused, this is the first time you're doing it, or not prepared. I'm going to talk about if that's you, even if that's not you, you just want to be proactive, how to prioritize like what actually matters, okay? Because sometimes we can have like information overload during the tax season. Do we have this receipt? Do we have that invoice? Do we have, what software? Who do we use as a preparer? But we're going to like narrow it down to prioritize like just what needs to be in front of you at this point. All right. And then also give you clarity on actionable next steps. Okay. So that's my hope for you as well, too, that you can take one or two action items away from today's session that is, okay, I know what I got to do. Hope told me what I have to do, and I know what I have to do to get this tax return file accurately. That's very important. All right. And then build your confidence for tax filing season. Because again, I know I run into a lot of newer business owners, but even maybe a business owner who's been in business for 20 years, it's something about the tax season that can just be like you think you got it together, but then you're, unsure at some point. Now, what this session won't do, we're not going to be providing individual tax advice today. I definitely say if you're a business owner, you want to be working with your own accountant, your tax preparer, someone who knows your financial situation because taxes, a lot of it, especially with the way tax laws are changing, we just had an overhaul of a lot of tax laws and the tax, like last year. So you really want to be working with someone who can look at your individual situation and say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what you don't need to do. Right. We're not going to get into the code, the complex tax code and details for reasons that I just explained. This doesn't replace working with a qualified tax professional. And we're not going to solve every accounting challenge that you're going to have during this tax season today, but we just want to kind of get you in the ballpark of feeling more comfortable. All right. So, for educational purposes, I would say. All right. Now, what you'll walk away with a clear definition of when I use the term tax ready, like what does that actually mean? All right. You're going to leave also with a prioritized list of what you want to be focusing in on this tax season. And then also decision clarity around filing, extending, or seeking support. Maybe you need to do an extension, maybe you need to get tax support, or maybe you're good to go at this point. And then lastly, we are working and talking about it, excuse me, and talking about those challenges so we can just kind of lower some of that anxiety surrounding the tax season and the mystery that it brings. All right. So, who is this woman who has been talking for the last 5 minutes? A little bit about me. Lisa introduced me, but I'm Hope Brown. I'm owner and founder of the Tax Minded Bookkeeper. So, we basically support business owners from tax planning, tax preparation, and bookkeeping, basically with their accounting services. But at a higher level, I'm super passionate about making sure that business owners also have the information they need to navigate this accounting and part that they're in, this financial part that they're in. I am a second generation Washingtonian, second generation entrepreneur myself. I definitely saw being in a family of entrepreneurs where they ran a home improvement business here in the Washington, D.C. area. I saw my parents challenged with this financial part. So I'm really dedicated to helping our clients and just the community make sure you feel a little bit more relaxed and empowered when it comes to the financial management in your business. All right. And just again, just a little bit about me. All right. So I also like at the beginning of our sessions to talk about is this session going to be right for you? Because time is so precious, right? So if you're a small business owner, maybe you're preparing to file, this might be your first tax season, you're in the right session. We're going to have something for you. Any entrepreneur seeking just clarity, you want to be know what to prioritize at this point related to your energy and the tax season, you're in the right session. And then for my more proactive business owners, or maybe you're thinking about starting a business, you want to be able to make sure you know what you're doing from this tax perspective. You're in the right room. All right. Now, why in the heck does a tax season feel so overwhelming? All right. If I had $1 million for every time that I have been asked that question, and just my observations and being in the industry, I would definitely say a lot of times we as individuals and business owners are getting a lot of conflicting advice. There's a new tax law that does this, there's a new credit that does that. But then one person that may be applicable for versus the next person, they can't basically qualify for, should all these different sources can make it super, super confusing for people. I think that there are unclear expectations as well. Sometimes somebody had a past experience that didn't go, exactly smooth, so to speak, and it left a confused feeling that never really got resolved. I mean, because at the core, like we are humans, okay? So when we have these experiences, we're bringing them forward, in time with us, one way or another. I see a lot of people also having an overwhelming tax season when they are doing what I call the last minute scramble. A lot of them are just waiting until the deadline to actually get started on filing the taxes and things like that. Even for me, and I'm in full transparency, I've already, I've already filed my extensions because I know. So I'm trying to help so many people get to the finish line of getting their taxes filed that I was like, you know what, let me take the pressure off of myself. And go ahead and do what I need to do with doing my extension. So after the tax season, once all you guys are filed, I'll be filing my own taxes. But that last minute scramble, that can be really overwhelming and a lot of stress for people as well too, right? Organizing the documents, the bookkeeping, all of that stuff, all right? And then also mixed emotions, okay? That blending the bookkeeping part with the tax stress and the financial anxiety all together, it can be a lot for people. As you can see, my little guy here holding his head, I just got off of a call with a client earlier who was like uber, like stressed over this tax situation, who looks similar to this guy. All right. But what I want you to take away from the slide is, yeah, it feels a little overwhelming, but it doesn't mean that, you're doing something wrong. I think anything related to taxes, the IRS, I have never met, like in my career, and I've been doing this for 15 years, anybody who is like super cool and relaxed when it comes to the IRS. Even us, we're in the field, we have a certain level of awareness when we're dealing with tax matters and things like that. So you are not by yourself. I think it's just a natural response. All right. Now, let's talk about tax ready and what it actually means, because I'm hoping that this definition will help you guys or some of the business owners out there relax a little bit more. So, what it does not mean is you have perfect books with zero errors. All right. We're just trying to get you in the ballpark, something to work with so that we can at least see your financials or see your record keeping. We can help you correct anything and ask the right questions to make sure we're reporting the right information. But some people just get paralyzed by the fact that maybe their bookkeeping in the back of their mind, they're like, okay, it's not perfect, so I'm not ready. So they just kind of freeze. Every transaction perfectly categorized, knowing every possible deduction. Like there is no way in the world. Again, major tax laws happen in 2025. People in our profession are still scrambling to try to catch up and understand everything and the impact on our clients. Like if you're not in this field, like you're not going to understand every deduction. That's what you go to the professional for to get your individual tax planning and advice from. Any kind of sophisticated accounting reports. I'll be honest with you, I love a good profit and loss statement, but as long as you have organized records that can show, okay, this is the amount of revenue that came in, this is the amount of expenses that went out, the operating expenses, we kind of categorize them all. That's a really good start. One side tip that I would say that would help you be able to do that, we're at the beginning of the year now. Make sure you have a separate business account set up for your business activities. If that is you, don't look into the camera directly, but commingling can really end up, like making things a lot more harder than they have to be when you're trying to dissect that for tax purposes at the end of the year. All right. But having an accounting system, or having just simple an Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet with that income and expenses, like that's miles ahead of what we meet a lot of people who have in place. And then years of experience. I would just say again, if you're a new business owner, maybe 1 or 2 years in, um, and you're filing your taxes for the first time and including a business, structure in it, like give yourself some grace. I would just say you're never going to feel ready. You just got to kind of jump in and get the help that you need to get through that first year, 2 years of filing. All right. Now, jumping over to the right column, what does tax ready really mean? Okay. You're organized, you've been hopefully consistently monitoring the finances during the year, so every month at a minimum, I'm going in and I am recording the income and I'm recording the expenses. So I'm tracking that so that at the end of the year, I have an organized, consistent set of financial, whether it's in a spreadsheet or whether it's in an accounting software. This is really going to help you be in the tax ready. If that's something you didn't do last year, like, we're in the beginning of the year. And that's why I love these sessions at January, February, March, because we still got all year to change any kind of practices that weren't serving us to be organized and consistent in the prior years. Like we got all year to implement these processes. So the next year, this time, we're in a really good situation. All right. Awareness of what's complete versus incomplete. So we'll have some clients come to us and they'll have like their record keeping done, their financials done, their accounting done. It might be a couple of loose ends that we have to straighten out and tie up, but we're in the ballpark. That's what I would say to being tax ready. Like, okay, here's my information, or you're doing it yourself in TurboTax. You're putting in the information. but there may be one or two things, but you're aware of what's complete versus what's incomplete in that situation that you're reporting. Understanding what can wait until later. Some people I meet, they will obsess about every single little receipt. We're going to talk a little bit later about how to tackle, like preparing from an organizational standpoint for the tax season. And then having a plan, even if it's not perfect, and then knowing the next steps. Those are things that I would say are in the ballpark of being tax ready and being able to survive the tax season as a business owner. All right. Let's talk what stresses you the most, right? And then maybe proactive tips on doing it better, to reduce that stress. All right. So starting off, the number one thing you need to be thinking about as a business owner who is preparing to do your taxes is the gathering documents phase. Okay, finding and organizing your paperwork. Okay. So hopefully by now, we're going into like March, what, third or fourth at this point. Hopefully by now, you've received 1099Ks, you've received 1099 NECs, you've reached out to those vendors to find out if they're going to issue those or not. Maybe you're a solopreneur who is still working a W-2 job, but you've gotten those kind of documents together. You have a good sense of income versus um, expenses. You're working to get all that information together. The more complete those documents are, I always like to say in January, just either create an electronic file or create a like paper file, all right? Where as that stuff is coming in, just put it in because gathering documents can really make or break your tax season. But having being intentional about it can really change the scope of the stress levels that I've seen with some of our most successful tax clients for sure. All right. Not knowing what's needed, uncertainty about the requirements and things like that. Again, I would say reach out for help. It's to at least, even if you're not going to work with a professional to actually do the taxes, work with somebody to understand, like, okay, based on my entity type, this is a type of tax return that I need to be filing. Okay. If I'm including a Schedule C, because I'm a sole proprietor or single member LLC, okay, I know that that has to be filed by a certain deadline, et cetera, et cetera. I know that I'm, adding this information versus if you're an S corp, it may be a whole different set of requirements. I see that stressing people out a lot. So take the time to connect with the resources to be able to understand that for your entity type, your business, your industry. Um, Fear of surprises, worrying about getting that IRS letter, 2 months after you file. People don't like surprises. I don't like surprises either, but that stresses people out a lot too. Working with a preparer, as far as the communication and the collaboration, people for some reason that can be stressful because they're thinking they're going to be exposed somehow, like you should be working with a preparer who is not judgmental, who communicates with you and things like that. So that would be my advice in that area. All right. And then also meeting the deadlines. That stresses people out. They're like, oh my God, if you're an S Corp right now, you already know by March 15th, you're supposed to have a return file. And that might be stressing you out if for some reason some of these other things are not in place. But can I get a raise hands in the chat for anybody who has experienced anything like that right now, or any kind of comments that you want to add? And I'm just pausing for a second to check that. Let me see here. You see, all of you guys are good. Nobody's feeling stressed during the tax season so far, so I'm gonna keep going. But definitely, just being able to relate to that can be huge, and acknowledging that. Now, let's talk about the essentials. What to gather before filing. I'm just going to jump into the actual work at this point. Okay. So, business income records, and we talked about that earlier. The 1099 forms. Sometimes businesses are sending them, sometimes they're not. Different criteria is changing for 2026. Sales summaries, payment processor reports, all of this different information you want to make sure you have. I'll share with you guys a quick story, for example. It is your responsibility as a business owner to be recording your income and your expenses. Don't leave it to anybody else. For example, I had this business owner client who was new. He came to us a couple of years ago. So a lot of times your tax preparer, they'll ask you questions, but especially if you're coming with the information, we're in the mindset of compliance during the tax season. I'm just being honest with you. We're trying to make sure that we are filing an accurate return based on the information that we have available. But this one client of mine, he used a merchant processor for a lot of his product sales. And they had charged him over $17,000 in merchant fees and processing fees. Okay. Now, I didn't know that. I'm just the preparer. I'm not doing his bookkeeping. We're not handling his bookkeeping or whatever, right? So I'm using the P&L that he gave me, which had some merchant fees on it. But again, I didn't know the high percentage that that merchant processor was taking. So, we file in 2023. But then in 2024, he just happens to send me like a sales summary or like a merchant processor report. And by the grace of God, literally, I looked at that and saw some of the fees that he had been paying during the year, but nobody had put it on the profit and loss statement for him. So I was like, okay. And when I went to him, I mean, long story short, we were able to find like I think it was about 15,000 in fees. So we went back and amended his 2023 tax return, and then he was able to rightfully pay that off. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, not pay that off, but rightfully claim that as an expense deduction for 2024. So just a cautionary tale, like have your paperwork together. That's what I'm saying. If you're unsure about something, just make sure that you are making available for your tax preparer, like your sales summary, all those type of revenue documentation, so that they can take a second look at it as well and just make sure you have everything. Okay. Start to organize also your expense records. The receipts should be organized by category, preferably. The best thing that you can do is in accounting software, when we report the expenses on the Schedule C or the S Corp return or some of the IRS requires us to group it by category. So we'll want to know things like all of your advertising expense, all of your contract labor, all of your, software expenses. So the more that that can be grouped together, whether it's in accounting software or whether it's in a spreadsheet, it's just going to go a lot easier for you as far as the tax prep is concerned, whether you're doing it or someone else is doing it. All right. Uh, I would also say bank cards and credit cards, like the statements for all of your business accounts used throughout the year. Sometimes for more of our intense clients, we like to see that information just to do a check and balance to make sure that things are aligning properly. All right. If you are running W-2 payroll, you also want to make sure that you're providing that information. That's normally a LLC, a single member LLC. You as a business owner cannot be on W-2 payroll yourself, but you can actually hire people to work for you who are W-2 employees, okay? Or if you're an S corp, you may be running W-2 payroll, but at the end of the year, your tax person should be asking you also for copies of those, the 1099 NEC forms to prove that they were sent out for any contractors that you're having. All those different things are things that you want to make sure you have your copies of and are straight. All right. And then lastly, we always ask new clients, and then for the last 2 years of tax returns, just to make sure if there are any kind of things on those returns that would affect the current year, we know about them, they've been identified, and they're good to go with that. So I would definitely say of these five things, this is just about completeness. Again, it's not going to be perfect in all five examples, but if you can get in the ballpark, or if there are reasons why maybe some of this information is not available, have that ready for your preparer. And that conversation can just be a lot less stressful, and you're prepared for those questions that they may or may not ask as far as what they need to prepare an accurate return for you. Just making sure you're getting all the deductions that you need. All right. So let me see something real quick. And I'm gonna stop there for a second. We're about almost halfway through. Any questions or comments or concerns at this point? I'm just taking a moment to check the chat.
I don't
Oh,
see anything in the chat, but you can always feel free to unmute yourself
yep,
if you have a question.
yep. No pressure, guys. So I'll go on then to what can wait and often should. Because again, I see a lot of business owners really, a lot of with tax preparation, it really weighs heavy on them. Okay. So what can wait and often should? Like if you're still trying to do some categorization in QuickBooks or in your own record keeping, but they're minor, that stuff can wait, okay? It can be resolved during the actual tax preparation. Like one of our clients, we were waiting for her to give us her financials, but it was one little category about a 401k contribution that the business made for her that she was still trying to work out with the bookkeeper. But like we knew the amount and things like that. And I was like, just give me the reports. So communicate with your tax person if there are minor categorization issues, like that could be a conversation versus holding up the whole tax prep process. Any kind of small discrepancies, minor differences of just a few dollars here and there that won't derail anything with their filing, like they can be addressed as needed. There's no need to stop everything as a result. All right. Complex reports that you don't even understand. Like I would just say, that those advanced statements and things like that. Like let's just focus on the basics. Profit and loss statement, record keeping of some sort, probably a balance sheet, depending on what your entity type is. You can take those to your professional, your tax preparer, your accountant, your CPA, and they can give you guidance on what's needed next. But again, don't stop everything trying to figure that out on your own. And then fixing every past mistake. Historical errors from month to month, right? They may not all need correction before this filing year to file this year. I definitely think it's a conversation that you need to have with your professional, but that's another reason why I've seen people just put off tax prep, right? And but they can be addressed during your tax preparation process, just to make sure that things are in place. But just the main thing is don't just freeze everything if any of these situations are you. I see so many people, they get a year behind, they're late filing, penalties, interest, just for like one or two simple things, which they're just a conversation really to correct. All right. Tax seasons, mistakes that create unnecessary stress. Okay. Let's talk about that next. Waiting too long to file, procrastination. Like it wasn't until I actually entered this industry and I started to really get to know my clients. Some people really have anxiety related to taxes, and I get it. But definitely the waiting too long to start, that procrastination, so April 15th is the deadline. So you don't even like open up the folder until April 1st. You asking for problems, guys, so waiting too long, avoiding that communication. I have some people, some really good people that I've been reaching out to since January 1st. I know they're going to come back to us to have us do their taxes, but they're avoiding communication probably because of the anxiety that is related to the tax process for them. But that can definitely, I know that stress is weighing heavy on them at this point. Trying to fix everything, knowing there may have been some mistakes in past years, which is causing you to feel some kind of way about not filing in the current year, and waiting to the last minute to even do that. Like, nope, like, the way, an example of the way that would look is, we have a couple of people who have come to us, business owners. We're doing like 2024 bookkeeping. We're doing 2025 bookkeeping that never got done. Now we're trying to fix all of that so that they can file those tax years. Like again, procrastination in the different areas for the information you're going to need as a business owner. Like we don't want to make that mistake. All right. Like being quiet, not asking the right questions. We normally try to reach out to our clients throughout the year. If we know they have the kind of business where we have to keep certain things on the radar. But as a business owner, it's your responsibility also to reach out. I would definitely say have a check-in before December 31st each year. And then also, even during the year, as you're preparing to meet with your professional, I have people who they're like, "Hope, I know I've been getting your emails, but I just need to know this question or that question." But don't go silent. Like, be asking your people the right questions if you need to get that clarity. All right. And then the last thing that I would say is another mistake that I think people kind of absorb is filing an extension and thinking that that is a failure. But I'm gonna just say it's nothing wrong with an extension, okay, if used strategically. Now, an extension is and I'll talk about this in a moment. An extension is an extension to file the tax return. But if you do owe tax, it's not an extension for the taxes due. So it's kind of tricky with that. But filing that extension will help you avoid late filing penalties that can be assessed if you don't file before those deadlines, depending on what your entity type is. So just so you know about that. All right. So just a reflection moment, your past experience. And I always just like to communicate with our people that we're giving this talk to. Have you ever felt delayed filing because you didn't feel ready? And that's definitely something that I've talked to business owners about. Just take a moment. Sometimes when you're going through it, we're in the tax season now, but I would just say if you're on a call, you saw the title of the session and you was like, I really need to be in that class. Just take a moment to consider like what would help you feel more confident sooner for next tax season. Not even putting pressure on for this tax season. Thinking about like, okay, I wish I had known it didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to get it to my tax preparer so we could tackle whatever we need to tackle. Better communication next year with my preparer, understanding what could wait or what have would have reduced my stress. I would say take notes for that, and your experiences are just going to help you identify the support you need going forward. If it's not in place for 2026, it definitely can be in place for 2025. So just a reflection exercise that I'd like you to think about, doing. Now, let's talk about we're at a point, it's like the 3rd or 4th of March at this point. It's the 4th of March. So we're getting close to the deadline. I know, like, for example, in our office, we like to have clients' paperwork and everything for on time April 15th filing. I like to have their paperwork, or at least we need to be talking to you by March the 6th. So I say that to say, some of our clients are not going to make that deadline. So, we start having a conversation about, okay, are we filing before April 15th? Are we going to do an extension? And what does that look like? Or do we just need help? Like, are they at a point of where, you don't have a preparer or you're doing it yourself, you're stuck on a question or whatever. Like, it could be multiple paths, depending on your situation. But I would definitely say if you're thinking about filing on time, meeting that April deadline, at this point, you should have everything close to being ready and organized. Okay. Now, the path of you filing an extension, that can give yourself more time to prepare properly. And I'll be honest with you, I would rather see individuals file an extension, and especially if they're waiting for additional tax forms that they're trying to track down, or if they're trying to do their bookkeeping, record keeping, and they want to make sure that they're reporting accurate information. It's so worth taking the time to figure that out and get all of that straight versus later on having to do a not an extension, but having to do an amendment because incorrect information was reported to the IRS. So again, it's nothing wrong with filing an extension. It's a really simple form that you can file, depending on what your entity type is, and you automatically have that next 6 months to actually do the filing without those penalties. And then also, be honest with yourself too, and just think about, okay, am I at a point if I'm still thinking about the tax season? Do I need to get professional help? Maybe working with a qualified tax preparer or CPA who can really guide you through that process, especially as a business owner, because taxes get more complicated for business owners, 100%. Okay. Maybe identifying who that person's going to be so they can help you make that decision on, okay, maybe we can file on time. It's not as bad as we're thinking. Maybe we can help you, but we're going to have to do the extension so we can have more time to get things organized and worked out, explain. But definitely that's a third option that you have as a business owner if you're on that ledge with like, okay, do I proceed now or do I not? All right. And then just addressing systematically over time rather than all at once, right? Cleaning up in the phases. That could be something else. Because I can tell you, one of the main reasons I see that people do an extension, and a lot of times they don't have their record keeping correct, all right? Or they're not sure or confident about it. So definitely extending to use that time to plan to clean up your record keeping, your books, depending on if the business has really had a lot of activity. Again, it may be worth your while taking the time to do that and getting some processes in place so things are in order for 2026. All right. So, how the tax prep connects to your business, right? So, a lot of people they think about taxes once a year, okay? But tax prep can actually connect to multiple parts of your business that you don't even think about. And I would say yes. So the filing, right? You're meeting the compliance of the IRS of Maryland State. You're meeting the compliance part. We are all required to file those tax returns. But if you have organized information and you're able to do the tax filing, it's also a good source of information to help us make financial decisions during the year after the taxes are completed. Looking at those, a lot of our clients will talk to us about hiring decisions they're trying to make that year, spending decisions, because they have good financial data. They have what they need to actually start looking at those things. Okay, fundings and loans is a big thing. A lot of the CDFI clients that we work with, or organizations that we work with that do loans for businesses, or it could be a normal bank institution. 9 out of 10 for any type of business loan, if you're thinking about expanding or even getting a business loan to start, they're going to want to have a copy of that tax return and know that you are being diligent with the filing as well too. So it kind of it screams like, okay, I'm taking this business serious. I'm meeting my compliance requirements and things like that to other institutions who are looking at those taxes, and then also the information presented in them as well too. All right. And then for future planning, just understanding the trends. Again, I can look at someone's tax returns for the last 4 or 5 years, and it tells a story. The financials tell a story, the tax returns tell a story. So, a lot of times we can look at those and use that for forecasting, for growth opportunities, and just understanding the trends. All right. So, this part of the journey that we're coming to, what to do after you're filing. So you've made it through all of the tough stuff. You file the tax return, like what comes in next. All right. I would definitely say, especially if it was challenging for you this year, because the record keeping was kind of iffy, make sure you're doing monthly bookkeeping check-ins, meaning the bookkeeping should be done. It's so much easier month to month to month to review your financial data versus for in February of next year to try to figure all this stuff out. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. I can't imagine if I had to go back and do my record keeping for a whole year, like past a whole year ago. I would just say even 30 minutes monthly, just really making sure that you're on target and on track is going to really be a game changer for you. So put that on your calendar to actually schedule that time to do those monthly bookkeeping check-ins. All right. I would also say throughout the year, ask those tax aware questions, okay? Because all of us are on social media, we're seeing different things about different tax credits, tax deduction. Tax planning, it starts before you get to the tax desk. So if there are possible deductions you could be taking advantage of or tax strategies, now's the time to talk to someone about identifying those during the year so you have more time during the year to be putting that plan into place, so to speak. So okay, if I buy a vehicle, this is what tax implication it can have. If I sell that vehicle, this is what tax implication it can have, as an example. Okay. Keep notes on any unusual activity. It could be, for example, sometimes when you're bringing your information to your preparer, we don't know the backstory. We haven't been there with you all 12 months during a year. For example, we had a client who was, she's an S corp and she has a cleaning business. There was something that happened with one of her vehicles that got totaled like last October, November. But we were still planning to depreciate that vehicle. But thank goodness, in a conversation, we just happened to have a conversation, right? She told us that that vehicle was no longer in service. And that can have an impact on the taxes, all right? So those little unusual conversations like that or situations, I mean, just start a note file so that those are things that don't get lost in the sauce. Because again, I can't, this is a woman who can't remember what she had for breakfast yesterday. If I don't write it down, like did something weird happen in my business that has a tax consequence, it may not be the normal record keeping or accounting or anything else. It may be one little thing that happened. If I don't write it down, I'm probably not going to be remembering it a whole year from now during the tax season. Just honest, okay? And then also separate the cleanup from planning. All right. Address those past issues separately from the current operations just to avoid confusion and keep you going forward. All right. So if there are things that are happening in prior years with the bookkeeping and stuff like that, please don't let that keep you from doing what you need to do to start maintaining good records in 2026. And that could look different ways. That could be an actual bookkeeping cleanup that you're doing or whatever that situation is. We had a client, they basically, so they went back and did a cleanup for the prior years, but it was to the point where it was just crazy, everything that was happening. So we ended up establishing a new books as of like the beginning of last year. And then once that cleanup is separated, we'll be able to go back and use that information to accurately amend their tax returns and such. But the owner was determined, like, okay, I need to have bookkeeping set up correctly in 2025, like a year ago. So we started the QuickBooks. We were able to maintain correctly throughout the year. So I would just say, like, don't let that stop you from doing things, moving forward to do things correctly, whatever that means in your situation. All right. All right. So action time. Let's talk about your next steps, right? What is one thing you could do after the tax season just to make next year or easier? I'm all about lesson learned. Okay. So is it a monthly bookkeeping habit and you're putting that on the calendar to remind yourself? Is it asking better questions with your tax pro and checking in regularly, maybe on a quarterly basis, especially if you're thinking you might owe estimated taxes, those type of things? Like put it on the calendar. Is it we learned a lesson about, okay, next year we're not going to wait until the last minute to call our preparer if we have a question. So get support sooner, maybe. Or the other thing is, you'd be surprised how many people are not tracking their income consistently. Meaning, the companies that we're doing work for in a lot of cases, they'll send us 1099s. But what do you do, for example, if the 1099 doesn't match what you have in your own records? Because you haven't consistently been tracking that. I mean, the 1099 is their interpretation of what's paid, for example, but I've seen companies make mistakes, but it was because we were tracking that income consistently separately, we were able to challenge that and make the company update and correct their information, if that makes sense. So just make sure you're tracking your income consistently. But one action step that we could take away from the day is what I would challenge you, people on the call or who see this later on, that you could be doing better with the financial management in your business that is going to lend itself to a more seamless tax season next year. All right. All right. Just remember like confidence, the things that build confidence is the key takeaways I want you to take away from for today is perfection is not required. Like you're not going to get all of this stuff right. Your books don't need to be perfect to be tax ready. We just want to make sure that they're organized and at least consistently being looked at during the year so it's not so overwhelming, after the tax season. Clarity is going to reduce that stress, knowing what matters and what you should be focusing on and identifying it based on some of the things we talked about today. Again, as founders and CEOs, we're already like multiple, we're already wearing multiple hats. Like, know what matters the most, just to have that clarity, on what you should be focusing that energy on, and that can reduce the stress. Being prepared, like, is nothing more like joyous to see a client that reaches out to us and they're like, here are my documents, I'm ready to go. I know important stuff that's happening in my business. All right, Hope, do what you do. Preparation does definitely bring clarity, not controlling every detail or outcome. And then small steps add up. And that's why I was saying choose one step today of things that that I covered today, and implement that in your business and the financial management. And then, next quarter, implement another step, and so on and so on. But you'll see that those small steps really add up, and they're going to make your tax season. If not this year, you will definitely reap the benefits in 2027. All right. So I am going to stop for a second, just to see if there are any questions. And if not, can you shed some light on startup business expenses for a new business? What type of expenses can fall under that category? Yeah, so great question, Carly. If you're a startup business, I'm assuming this is your first year that you're kind of venturing out. So there are special credits in the startup year, things like legal fees, like business registration fees, really anything that's going towards you setting up that business. Bringing in a consultant to help you set it up, bringing in contract labor if you need the aid of someone, maybe you hire a marketing person, all of those different kind of expenses can 100% be written off. So from a practical perspective, what I would say for you is, if you can you share with me whether or not what entity type you are? If you're a single member LLC, or that's what I'm thinking. Let me see something real quick. And guys, what I'm doing over here is I'm pulling up. Okay, bear with me one second. Okay, I'm sharing a document with you. Can you guys see this? At the top, it says profit or loss from business.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're a single member LLC, this is one of the forms that you're going to be including with your actual tax return this year or next year when you start your business. But part two here has a list of advertising, expenses, operating expenses that we technically would be reporting to the IRS. So that can kind of give you an idea of like the individual type of expenses that you can basically write off. In addition to that, in the startup year, I see a lot more legal fees, for example, maybe business registration fees. Maybe you're hiring someone to do market research, all of those different things. So I hope that that helps to give you a idea about like, hey, this is what I can do as far as writing off for different expenses in that startup year. I would definitely say if it's a really strong business idea and you're going to go forward, a lot of business owners I know, because maybe in the first year the revenue is super low, they won't actually write it off. But the IRS has special provisions for startup costs in the first year, the very first year of the business, that they allow you to do up to a certain dollar amount. So definitely make sure you work with a tax professional to claim those things. Because even if it results in a loss in your business in that first year, you can use them to reduce taxable income down the line. But it's got to be captured in that year that you start the business. All right, but check out the Schedule C. That's going to give you a guideline of the kind of things that you're going to be able to write off, and then some of the things that I mentioned. Well, like, so for example, Carly, I'm assuming you can't talk at this point, but you're free to come off mic and we can talk through it. But like I said, I would be interested in knowing the industry that you're in that could help you, that could help me give you a little bit better advice as well too. But a lot of times before you even take your first dollar, there are expenses to starting a business. There could be the expense of actually registering your LLC with the state. It could be the expense of setting up a website with your domain. It could be the expense of hiring a lawyer to do that, maybe if you're like contracting it out. It could be the expense of you starting record keeping, hiring a bookkeeper to help you. All those different things are can be written off in your first year of business if they are indeed, going towards helping you to set up that business. And then also for ML4CH, this is the Schedule C document from the IRS, and I'll put this in the chat also so you guys can link to it directly. But yeah, that document is going to be the one that is filed with your income taxes as a single member LLC. So it's always a good start to see, like, hey, like what are some of the things we could be writing off? All right. Any other questions at all or follow-up questions to that? Carly, I hope that was helpful. Okay, cool beans, cool beans. All right, guys. So I'll put this information here. Definitely, if you guys would like to reach out, if you have more individual questions, you're free to connect with us at www.bbizsolution.com. And that might be a better form. Sometimes the tax questions can be private in nature, so to speak. If that's you, reach out and we can go from there as far as helping you just get set for the tax season. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Lisa. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Hope. That was wonderful. Lots of great information. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you for joining us today. Like she said, if you have any questions that she didn't answer today, just email her. And hope you guys can join us for our next class, which I have to remember what that is. Hold on one second.
They have a whole wonderful lineup, guys. As business owners, you want to be connected with this organization. I was even looking. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this looks incredible."
I'm a little distracted since we have our conference in a couple days, so my mind's somewhere else. But our next class is Business Plan and Cash Flow Projections, and that is March 11th. And it is from 12 to 1, I believe. So all of our classes are free. No, actually, this is an evening class. It's from 6 to 7. So we try to do some during the day, some in the evening, to change it up. And then the next day, March 12th, we have an SBA 8A Business Development Program. That's for people who want to become, do contracting, women-owned small business certification. So that will tell you more about that. But yes, get on our website, check out all of our classes, and hopefully you can join us. So thank you guys very much, and I hope you guys have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everyone.
See
Bye-bye.
ya.
Okay.